Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope doing well. And today, as I wait for the official box office numbers for this weekend to come out so I can do the box office breakdown for Geeks and Gamers, and as I prepare for another Chosen of Valhalla live stream, which should be going live in the next 45 minutes or so, I wanted to do just a little bit of a retrospect and comparison of a few box office films, because there have been several films mentioned on the channel when comparing Rise of Skywalker to films that have come previously, especially when it looks to the battle between Rise of Skywalker and Joker, and also between Rise of Skywalker and Rogue One, and it looks like we're coming to the end of that battle, and I do have a little bit of analysis as to what I think will likely happen by the end of the Rise of Skywalker's run, and how it will probably get to that point. So as you all know, the main comparison that I've been using for Rise of Skywalker is another Star Wars film, which is that of Rogue One. Even though Rise of Skywalker, as you can tell from the charts up here, let me go ahead and just make this just a little bit bigger for you guys. As you can see, it did much better in its opening weekends, and its first week or so, than Rogue One. That's, of course, also before you adjust these numbers for inflation, which, in the end, I think would still keep it ahead, would still keep Rise of Skywalker ahead. But once you get out of that second, or once you get into that second weekend, rather, you start to see a shift happen. You start to see that Rogue One shows how much well-liked it was after its initial release. That's one of the reasons why Rogue One ended up making over $1 billion, was that it had a lot of positive, word of mouth. It had a lot of people pushing that direction with the film, saying, hey, this is the film that you should go out and see, and guess what? That's what ended up happening. Versus the Rise of Skywalker, where you had a very strong initial uptick because, hey, it's the last of the Skywalker saga. It's the last Star Wars film that's going to be out for a while. You have to go see this movie, and so everyone's like, oh, let me go see it. And then the word of mouth campaign really just wasn't all that strong, and so eventually you start to see in this back and forth, Rogue One basically completely took over, and it did not take very long, about 4 weeks or so, before it eventually took over completely the entire domestic box office take. And remember that this 481 right here, the official, or rather when Rogue One officially made more than The Rise of Skywalker domestically, is also before you adjust for inflation, which means we could theoretically say it happened the fourth Monday or fourth Sunday. Still doesn't matter. Rogue One at this point has been ahead in almost every single category. There's been 2 random days in the 9th week of release where Rise of Skywalker did better than the release of Rogue One. But as you can see, we have the movies doing very well here. So 128 versus 115, 109 versus 101, 177. So even in its 10th Sunday of release, Rogue One did significantly better than anything else. And I think just goes to show you, Rogue One is going to end up with having the higher domestic gross, which shows you a big problem. It shows you that since 2016, especially since The Last Jedi, the excitement for Star Wars in the domestic marketplace, the US, Mexico, Canada, has dropped tremendously. Also, of course, you see that in that 10th Monday, they ended up pulling it out of so many theaters that it barely made any money. Here's what I think is going to happen, though. I don't think Rise of Skywalker is going to have enough money left in the tank in order for them to push it over Rogue One numbers. Now, some people might say, oh, well, when you compare the entire worldwide numbers, it's $1,069,000,000 versus $1,056,000,000. Both of these numbers, again, this number right here, rather, is before you adjust for inflation. And when you do, this number goes to be well over $1.1 billion, which means that this film, Rise of Skywalker, is not going to ever be able to match up to what Rogue One, A Star Wars Story did, which, again, a lot of people say, does that mean you're saying Rogue One's not a good movie? I personally didn't like it, but I recognize that a lot of people did like it, and that's the reason why the film did so well. That's the reason why I'm using it in the comparison, because Rogue One had good word of mouth. A lot of people spoke positively about the movie, and that's what kept more and more people coming back down the line, versus Rise of Skywalker, where the word of mouth was not as positive, even though the Rotten Tomatoes score and the cinema score said certain things. Obviously, the box office numbers show is that it really didn't play out that way in real life. Now, what else is interesting is that Rogue One came out in very significantly less theaters, about 300 less theaters overall, and also had a smaller box office opening weekend, which again goes to show you there's a reason why even people like Skyboy Mendelsohn over at Forbes said Rise of Skywalker had one of the worst drop-offs from week 1 to week 4, and then pretty much every metric after that, from opening weekend until, several weekends after, significant drop-offs. And that just goes to show you the film really didn't have that many legs, and even though it made $1 billion, it did so because basically it had a good opening weekend, because enough people were still saying, hey, I'm willing to give Star Wars one last chance. And then everyone pretty much stopped at this point. Now, the other movie that I've compared Rise of Skywalker to is Joker. And the reason why is because of a little thing called production budget. Look at the Joker's production budget. It was $55 million, meaning in total it cost between $75-85 million when you account for marketing. Versus the 275. This is, of course, also, just for the record, this is what they tell us the production budget was. And even if I were to assume that this is accurate, which means this would be a film that cost less than The Last Jedi, by the way, which, again, take that with a giant grain of salt. There's some people and some sites that say Last Jedi cost around $300 million. This does not include marketing campaign. Marketing campaign for Rise of Skywalker, I think all of us will admit, is likely higher than the standard. Normally, you multiply that by 1.5, the production budget, and that gets you your total cost. Something tells me that they may have even doubled the amount of money on this one, or that they may have at the very least spent 1.75 times as much. And just because I have never seen a film like that, even a Star Wars movie, have that much promotion for it, have those many extra trailers, extra, scenes, extra behind the stuff, all that kind of a push. So I really do think Rise of Skywalker spent more than the average movie would on marketing, which makes me think that this number is a little bit higher. And depending on how high that number is, and I'm hoping we get some actual tangible data, some actual speculation as to what that actual production budget and rather what the actual marketing budget would be, because this film is set to have made around $100 million in actual net gain, net profit. But if that number for its marketing goes higher than what I projected it to be, that means that it becomes $50 million in net gain, net profit. And if it's even higher than that, possibly even just barely breaking even. Now, again, we're going to be fair here and just say that the film ended up making some profit. But what's interesting is that it's nowhere close to what Joker did. Joker, rated R film, costing $55 million, made over $1 billion at the box office and over $500 million in net gain, net profit. When you take into account the theater's cut, when you take into account how much it cost to promote and to produce the film, $500+ million is left over in net gain profit for Joker. But the other thing that's been fascinating to watch is the entire international box office too, because at this point, as of right now, Joker is still ahead at $1,073 million versus Rise of Skywalker's $1,069 million. Now, I've been saying this for a while that I think Joker had a very good chance to end its theatrical run with a higher number than Rise of Skywalker. But here's the one thing that makes me think that Disney is going to push and shove and promote the hell out of Rise of Skywalker until it ends up beating Joker. And the reason why is because if you look at how many, that's something that I was following yesterday. If you look at how many theaters the movie is still playing in for Rise of Skywalker, it's still playing in 558 screens. So 434 screens have left, still 558. But when you compare that to what Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, was at the same time in history, you see that it had eventually a giant drop-off to 81,000, 66,000, and then eventually they just stopped tracking it. I would not be surprised if Disney tries to stronghold theaters to try and say, you have to have this theater, you have to have this movie in for so long. Maybe they'll even pay the theater, saying, we'll pay you a stipend if you hold on to our theater just a little bit longer, so that way our overall international number can be just a little bit higher. Because I honestly think that they see this comparison, that they say, we cannot have that story. We cannot have that metric of Joker made more money than Rise of Skywalker. A $55 million R-rated movie made more money than the last film in the Skywalker saga. I honestly believe that, right? I'm not a person that's going to say, oh, I have sources, I have this, I have that, right? I don't have any. All I have is a speculative mind, and all I can see is the battle between this and Rogue One, which it lost because when you adjust for inflation, it lost that battle, and then the battle between it and Joker. And the reason why I think that's so much more important is because keep in mind how many people in Hollywood, how many people in the media just hated Joker, did not like the fact that Joker was doing so well. Even though the Academy ended up nominating it for so many different things, there still was that sense of hatred. There still was that sense of, we can't promote this movie. We can't support the things that it seems to promote, even though it's just a good movie. And so I think the people at Disney see this metric and say, we cannot have our movie end less than Joker. Because if it does, guess what? As soon as Rise of Skywalker's out of almost every theater and stops making money, I will make that official video saying Joker officially beats Rise of Skywalker at the box office. But at this point, If I had to speculate, if I was a betting man, I would say Rise of Skywalker will hair out Joker by just a little bit, which still doesn't look good, by the way, because it's still a film like Joker that is doing head-to-head, going toe-to-toe with a giant behemoth in The Rise of Skywalker with the likes of Disney. But I think that they'll do it for the metric of saying, well, hey, at least it made more money. Keep in mind that Joker is also, in and of itself, getting pretty damn close to beating out another Disney film. I think that's the push that they're going to try. I think that's what they're going to try and end up doing, because it's all about metrics with them. It's all about their damn pride. And if they could do anything to try and push The Rise of Skywalker ahead of anything, what else would be better for them to say? A film that made more money than Joker. Even though anyone with a brain would realize, really, that's not really all that impressive when you take into account how many theaters, how long it was out, and the overall cost, and also the fact one was PG-13, accessible to more people, one was rated R. One had an amazing marketing campaign that got pushed to the moon. The other one had a good marketing campaign that was enough to be able to get this film to be very successful. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. Again, Rogue One: A Star Wars Story ends up being the winner at the end when you adjust for inflation. So Rise of Skywalker did not have the legs to be able to hold off against it. Again, if you just go ahead and look that week after week, this middle category here, again, Rise of Skywalker, or rather Rogue One, just beat it out every single way in every single capacity. And I think that that's something that you'll see continue on. However, once you get to this 10th Wednesday, 10th Thursday, that's when you could potentially see Rise of Skywalker's numbers go a little bit higher. And the only reason why I think is because I believe they are keeping it out in more theaters because they want the film to have as much money as they can, because at the end of the day, I think they want this film to beat Joker. So they'll keep it in theaters probably for another 2 weeks or so. They'll do everything they can to keep it in theaters just a couple more weeks just so they can try and creep up and take over Joker. But if it doesn't, that's awesome news. But even if they do, I'll be ready to call them out. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this and all the things we talked about in the comment section below. Like this video, smash the like button, give me a subscribe, it helps me a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless. And now to give a shout out to my February Patreon and Subscribestar members: Animation Commentator, Brian P., Dion, David Brobrizik. Please let me know if I need to repronounce that name. DivX, Elizabeth M., Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Weird Dog Clan, Harold Francis, The Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jeffrey Toon, Jeffrey Lebowski, JJ Jonathan Jerembeck, Kenneth Cameo, Lady T, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, Orange Hat Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Perpetual Punster, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, The DJD Show, and Tina B. And over on Subscribestar, Robert Revo, Larry, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, Alice McCarthy, US 888-209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nebanon G. Adams, and ZK Man. Then a shout out to Riff Racer Request and Sir Lance Elato and Mike Jackson. You rock. Thank you very much for being my Patreon Subscribestar members for the month of February. And if anyone else decides to join, at the next couple of days or so, I will add you into this list as well. You guys freaking rock. Have a wonderful one. And as always, God bless.